Welcome to a harsh reality broadcast on the 18th of November 2013. The purpose of the presentation is to give my economic forecast for 2014. However, before I give the presentation, I would just like to talk about a bias called confirmation bias. I'm going to admit this. To a certain extent, I have suffered from confirmation bias myself, and it's very, very powerful. I've been seeking the views that agree with my beliefs, and I'm beginning to appreciate that that's not always correct, and I do try to get a balanced viewpoint when I do my research. Behind me you'll see the caption, "How Warren Buffett Avoids Getting Trapped by Confirmation Bias." Warren Buffett is arguably the most successful investor in history, and a good part of his success is his ability to make investment decisions without being influenced by the combination of emotional factors and subconscious biases that govern most human behaviour. One of the most insidious bugs in the software that runs the human brain is what psychologists call confirmation bias. That's the tendency that influences all of us to put more faith in information that agrees with what we already believe and discount opinions and data that disagree with our beliefs. That's very, very interesting. We all tend to suffer from confirmation bias. We all have our own set of beliefs, and to confirm our beliefs we talk to like-minded people. That's why it's very, very rare to shift the beliefs of somebody else. What I'm trying to do is to get more of an objective viewpoint on things. My biggest problem is I actually thought gold was going to increase, and it did the opposite, and I tended to look at other websites that confirm my set of beliefs. I still think the fundamentals are very, very bad, but I didn't realise how things could pan out. But I have learnt from that. When I did my forecast last year, most of the other predictions were correct. Another bias that we tend to suffer from is normalcy bias. And again, that's very, very powerful. And the last generations, over the 40 years or so, have got used to a lifestyle that has been very, very stable, and they expect that to continue into the future. Okay, what's my view on the current financial crisis? I am more worried this year than last year about how things are going. As far as I'm concerned, the politicians in the US have been extremely irresponsible. They proved that with the fiscal cliff, continuation of quantitative easing, and just raising the debt ceiling. Now, the politicians really only have two choices. They can either balance the books or continue with quantitative easing. From my point of view, they should consider trying to balance the books. Do it at quite a slow pace, but start going in that direction. Because if they don't go for that goal, the end result with the continued quantitative easing, in my opinion, would be disastrous. But we have politicians that think short term, they wish to stay elected, and they hope that the collapse happens on somebody else's watch. Now, the Federal Reserve are going to have a new chairperson next year, Janet Yellen. I suspect she's going to actually increase quantitative easing, and that's one of the predictions I'm going to make. Now, have you noticed Greece is no longer in the news? Therefore, people's focuses have moved away from Greece. But the problems are absolutely dreadful. And because we don't see them on a daily basis, we don't understand what's going on. But may I suggest that you do your research and see what's happening there It's a tragedy, it really is. People have lost a lot of money out there, and the standard of living has fallen significantly. Okay, I think also gold is going to continue to fall. Now that's new for me to say that, but whilst we've still got this feel-good factor, and that's what we've got at the moment, I actually do believe gold prices are going to fall. So until people wake up, I think that it will continue to fall. I do believe there's going to be an increased risk of bank bail-ins in some Western countries. It's happened in Cyprus. Again, the focus has been taken away from Cyprus. People think that we are in recovery, and therefore there's no panic. But I think come next year we'll see more evidence of possible more bank bail-ins, so watch this space. On the 7th of February next year, I think the debt ceiling will be raised again. Politicians are not prepared to face reality, and therefore they will keep the fantasy going as long as possible. I believe that stress will continue to be a problem in the workplace, and it will get even worse. More and more work will be placed on fewer and fewer staff. Civil disobedience, I think there will be a much increased risk of problems, and especially in the UK. From the beginning of January in the UK, we're going to open our borders up to the Bulgarians and Hungarians. I think this is going to cause major friction. The pace of change in the UK is far too quick. I'm all for immigration, but it has to be controlled. Unfortunately, I think far too many are going to come into an already overcrowded country, and this will cause problems. I believe we're going to continue with price inflation as a result of quantitative easing and low wage inflation. At the back of me, I've just put up an article, Paul Sykes, I want to set Britain free from the EU. Paul Sykes is on a crusade to get a referendum on British membership and restore our borders. And he's putting his millions where his mouth is, he tells Philip Johnston. He can see the writing on the wall. This is another one I'm putting up behind us. This is the BBC News. Directors' pay jumped 14% in a year thanks to share incentives. Now, you think about this, the pay gap is increasing between the rich and the poor. I remember being told at one time, for a happy population, the person who's at the bottom of the scale should be on 20 times less than the person on the top of the scale in that particular company. Well, now the ratio's gone from 1 to 20 to 1 to 200 to 1 to 500, and they don't seem bothered, these people that run major companies. They do tend to be very greedy, in my opinion. And it says that the average pay for a director is about 3.3 million. That is absolutely disgusting. But there is no resistance to that. I think there'll be a resurgence of the Occupy Wall Street movements. I think people have to wake up because it's now so blatant. And here's another one I've put behind me. The Dow Jones hits 16,000 points for the first time ever. Honestly, think about this. The fundamentals are still dreadful, yet the stock markets are doing so well. There is going to be a major crash, because once people realise that this is unsustainable, the confidence will evaporate. But at the moment, the stock markets are going up like no tomorrow, and this seems to be in line with the quantitative easing. From my viewpoint, we cannot taper quantitative easing, because it would mean facing reality and a major depression. But the problem is, the more we delay reality, the worse the depression is going to be. Well, thank you very much for listening. I've hoped you have enjoyed the presentation.